Craig was beyond elated that Mike Danna was back, but was unable to go on the breaking news team. We're going to give him some chances to wax poetic and more on this week's Lab. Let's go.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our absolutely wonderful partner in Possible. I am here with my absolutely wonderful partner, one of my favorite people on this planet, Craig Stout. Craig, hi, how are we?
Hi, I am well. Like you alluded to, I was unable to join the breaking news team because this football organization hates timing things at a normal time when people would be available, not when I'm out eating with my family on a Friday night or hanging out with my spouse on a Saturday night. Nope. They are purposely targeting all of us with families with their news breaking cycles. It's wild this year, right?
I mean, yeah, I was under the gun too. Like I had to leave 20 minutes into the breaking news team, but we still got it done nonetheless. The Chiefs have tried to slip some stuff past us late at night, Friday. You can doubt the breaking news team. You can disrespect the breaking news team. That's right. I'm not finishing it because I don't really want to, and I don't.
Yeah.
But it's okay. We did it.
Acknowledge that it's just the two of us. Our other dear pal, Maddie, is prepping for a baby on the way. So, yeah, he will not be around for this week. We will try and guide this ship through free agent waters at this point without one Matthew Lane, and we'll just do our best.
We'll try. We'll do our absolute best to do this. Lot to cover today. First off, Mike Danna has returned to the Kansas City Chiefs 3-year, $24 million deal. A little more than half of that is guaranteed money. Craig, like I'm so used to saying Matthew transition at the top. But, the longer I think about it, we kind of anticipated this inevitability of him coming back. A lot of reports started to come back that the Chiefs were starting to work something. I'll tell you what, when we heard a week ago or so, or more honestly, that Mike Danna was somebody that they were working on bringing back, but they hadn't, normally what happens if it's simple, you hear, oh, hey, I think the Chiefs are trying to bring Mike Danna back. And then if it's that afternoon, it's Mike Danna has agreed to a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
But when it's a 4-day window of, hey, we're starting to hear some things about Mike Danna coming back to Kansas City, the longer that whole conversation goes, you kind of wonder, maybe this is a multi-year deal. Turns out it is. The Chiefs get him for 3 years. They get a key role player back on a relatively cheap contract.
Yeah, this is, signing Mike Danna back to this roster has always made sense. The Chiefs did a good job of taking some high upside players, potentially quick win pass rushers with, Felix Anudike-Uzomah last year and BJ Thompson. We didn't get to see very much of either one of those guys. And without a Mike Danna level player in the room, one or both of those guys was going to be expected to contribute in a big way with Charles Omenihu out. So it's one of those where you were going to be forced to play a second-year player who did not play very much, a significant role. And if he doesn't learn very quickly, yikes, that's going to hurt. And that's going to hurt this defense. It's going to hurt the progress of that player. So this just makes all the sense in the world to have a veteran like Mike Danna, a guy that Joe Cullen says, does everything right all the time, practice, game, whatever the case may be. He is spotless in his execution. Not the most athletic player, not the quickest pass rush win or anything like that, but does everything exactly how it's meant to go. And I love that after this signing was announced, the video from the Chiefs locker room last year was going around with Drew Tranquill, with Justin Reed, with a whole bunch of players that are very key parts of this defense saying, yeah, it's that guy. It's 51. He's the one that is always right. When we're in film studies, it's like, man, look at what he did. Can you believe that he was able to pull that off? To a contract like this, $8 million a year, obviously it'll probably ramp. And so what we're talking about, it's bigger final year, one that you can probably get out of with not a ton of dead money. I mean,
Think a Marquez Valdez Scantling structure,
perfect. Exactly.
something along those lines.
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely the case. So something like that on this roster does not prevent them from playing other guys in front of him, from adding other guys to the equation. We expect that George Karlaftis is going to play a significant role. He's growing into this role. He should be your DE1. You are hoping that Felix steps up and takes that DE2 role, but you give him runway now. You give him a little more runway, and you give him another guy in the room that can teach him exactly how to do things for 3 years. Worst case in this scenario here, Mike Danna is starting for you for 3 years, and he is probably a low-end DE2 in this league. And you know what? That's fine, because guess what? He's also pretty much been your starter and your low-end DE2 the past 2 years, and this is a team that has really gotten after the passer well with Chris Jones, obviously, being the focal part of this defense. He's the one that really makes things go, but you have to have a guy next to Chris Jones or on the other side of Chris Jones that's doing things so right to cover when Chris does get out of his gap, which works. I'm not trying to pick on Chris here. It works. He gets after the passer. He creates all sorts of havoc in the backfield. Having somebody that can help cover that up just makes all the difference in the world, helping the young kids come along. You're hoping next year that Mike Danna is not starting anymore, that your first-round pick is starting. Maybe halfway through this year, you're hoping this first-round pick is starting. This contract does not prevent or preclude any of that, and it gives you another stable presence along the defensive line for 3 years. I love the move all around.
Speaking of moves, we have some breaking news here from the KCSN Discord. The KCSN 2024 member mock draft is underway. We have received the first pick. Splaticle and the Chicago Bears are selecting Caleb Williams, the quarterback out of USC. The Washington Commanders are on the clock. That comes from Kent Jeremiah, as I will now be named in the KCSN Discord. And they're off. Have fun, gentlemen.
Yes.
Can't wait to follow along. This is going to be an absolutely great time.
That's really fun. For those of you who don't know the KCSN Discord, there is a full 7-round mock draft that is now officially kicked off. Everybody, there's a whole bunch of people that have taken GM roles. There's some guys that have overlapped each other that are co-GMs and things like that. They did a mock offseason before this as well. So, this is not just, hey, we're going to draft these guys. They've been building their teams. And so this is just a really fun thing that we get to do as part of the KCSN Discord. Maddie's usually the one that kicks us off, Maddie Kuiper. So Kent Jeremiah being the one to lead us into this new era, it's only fitting.
Yeah. Christian Gumminger asked me if I wanted to be Kent McShay, and I was like, you know what? I think I'd rather be Kent Jeremiah. I think I'm good. We'll go with my guy DJ. But yeah, Kent that is Miller. Underway. If you want to follow along, you can access the KCSN Discord with a KCSN Substack subscription. And oh, by the way, the KCSN draft guide is out. It's 300 plus pages of Chiefs-specific draft content. And you can get that in 3 months of the KCSN Substack for $13.99. So you can kind of follow along on this mock. You can get into the Discord, engage with a bunch of other Chiefs fans and people just talking about all kinds of different things on there. It's been really cool to see that kind of community build, which is why the mock draft is a thing now, because there's a community on the Discord that's just a lot of fun. So you can sign up for that. You get a link to access the Discord when you sign up for KCSN Substack. So buy the draft guide, it's out, and then you can get 3 months of that as well. Links are in the descriptions of this show. I love what you said, Craig, about, Mike Danna doing what he's asked to do. And you heard all those players talking about that thing. It's just he's underrated because he's going to do what he's asked to do. He's going to be assignment sound. He's going to be a team player. He's not chasing numbers. He's not chasing stats. He's wanting to win football games and do right for his team. And I love what you said kind of just about building around Chris. This team has built around Chris to the point where the entire defensive line is essentially back for this team. I think it is. think it's just back.
Yeah.
They've brought the entire defensive line back around Chris Jones. This is a group that knows how to play that Chris knows how to play with, that's been amenable to him moving around whenever he wants to move around and telling a guy, hey, you're rushing from here this play, big boy.
You
Sorry.
can't do that if you don't have another guy that you can kick all the way out to a wide 9 or all the way into a 3 technique in your sub rush, which Danna can do. But yeah, to go to your point there. Yeah.
So here we are, and the Chiefs have essentially brought back their entire defensive line. And they've got the same bodies that they had in 2023 on the roster. So I ask you the question, Craig, do we think this defensive line is set here? Do we think that they're going to make some moves, be it in free agency, be it the draft? What say you?
I think that the defensive end room is locked in. I think it's set because you've got now Charles Omenihu still on the roster, not going to be healthy until end of this season. That's okay. You get him the playoff run. You've got George Karlaftis. You've got Mike Danna. You've got Felix Anudike-Uzomah. You've got Malik Herring. And you've got BJ Thompson on the roster. I don't think you need much more or many more bites at the apple there. I feel like you've got enough mix of good run stoppers to get out there, eat some early down snaps, a good enough mix of guys that can kick in there in the sub package, and Mike Danna and George Karlaftis that are going to be able to play all 3 downs. So I really like the way that the room is constructed. I really like that early on, without a Omenihu there, they're going to have to rely on some of the young guys to kind of build out the rest of it, to build out the pass rush. I think that's going to help them as the season goes along without having to have them be the starter and having to have them eat, 80% of the snaps. You can ease them in and start ramping them up into sub packages. I got my eye on interior defensive lineman, though. There's nobody on this interior that is signed in Kansas City beyond this year outside of Chris Jones. So I am still looking there. Now, I do think it's a draft situation. I think they got enough vets in the room. I think you feel comfortable with the number of, guys that have been in the league, know how to handle their business, that have been around for long enough. You feel good about those guys duking it out. If you land with a guy in your lap that you feel really good about, Chiefs just hosted Michael Hall on a top 30 visit earlier today. So a guy from Ohio State would play interior defensive line, makes some sense if the value is right, because then all of a sudden you feel like, we ditch one of these veterans, put a little more faith in our young guys building towards the future. So I do think that there will be an addition at some point in the draft, but I don't think that they're going to press it by any means, because they can definitely go into this year with their defensive line room set the way that it is.
They definitely could. If you look at the depth chart on our lads, there's 12 bodies that this team played last year on the defensive line already on the roster. And you've got, that's not even including an Isaiah Buggs, who the Chiefs signed very quickly.
They like. Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's inventory that they are keeping of the nose tackle, one tech types. I think there's competition. Derek Nottie, I think he got a little bit of guaranteed money, so it does sound like there's a better chance that Nottie returns. A Mike Pennell, Isaiah Buggs, Neil Farrell. Those are 3 guys that are probably duking it out for opportunities, duking it out for an active roster spot. But, Mike Pennell was on, he was out in the streets when the Chiefs picked him up. Isaiah Buggs out in the streets when he signed as a practice squad player. These are guys that you can kind of keep on inventory. The valuation of a one tech, nose tech type, maybe not as high as some other positions, but like Mike Pennell had the game of his life in the Super Bowl.
He was awesome. He was incredible. Yeah.
And so, like, keeping some of the bodies on this roster, I think it's a good idea. You'll see how Derek Nottie recovers. Mike Pennell, maybe he's a guy you feel comfortable stashing on the practice squad. Maybe he's a guy that feels comfortable being stashed on the practice squad. And then you call upon him late in the season and he goes out and plays like he did in the Super Bowl. Same with an Isaiah Buggs type player. So they have a lot of one tech type players. they really don't have a ton of interior penetrators beyond Chris Jones that you're particularly excited about. And I like Tershawn Wharton, I think, is the one that stands out the most as a guy that we've seen be able to win with quickness, getting in a gap and be disruptive. But he kind of, and I think the Chiefs are hoping and betting that he comes back with a little bit more juice in year 2 removed from his injury. Beyond that, Matt Dickerson is on the roster, and that's it. So the Michael Hall interest doesn't surprise me all that much, because if they wanted to try to get a little bit more juice from a pass rush perspective along the interior, I think I've talked about this on one of the shows, but I love the idea of Michael Hall at like a pick 64. If you told me the Chiefs took the interior defensive tackle that showed some ability as a pass rusher, was under the age of 21 when they drafted him, could spell Chris Jones and provide some juice pass rushing along the interior, help lengthen Chris Jones's career a little bit by taking on some of those reps, like that appeals to me. So the idea of a Michael Hall and the developmental upside of a Michael Hall very much appeals to me. I get why the Chiefs might be looking at him at pick, looking at him as a day 2 pick with the 30 visit that they have for him today. So I think interior defensive line makes some sense. The only other thing I don't think that there's going to be any edge rushers that are going to be available that are just going to blow the Chiefs away from a value perspective at 32 or even in a trade up. Like I don't think there's a ton of guys that you're going to go up and move up for at the edge position. I think there's a few, I don't want to say there's a few replaceable bodies. I think edge could be more on the table for this team than maybe you do. I could see them taking a swing at day 2 if the value fits right at pick 64 or 95. Because beyond a Dana, Amenahu's going to be gone next year. Karlaftis, if you're looking to upgrade from Malik Herring, you're looking to upgrade from BJ Thompson. I wouldn't be stunned to see the Chiefs do that, even though, they definitely could roll out with this group comfortably.
Yeah, I think it would have to be exceptional value, if that makes sense. I don't think that even at equal value, they may even look at their board and say, "What's up, Patrick?" They look at their board and say, "Okay, we've got an edge at the top of our board. It's about the right value for this guy, but we might want to trade back. We might want to trade back just because the room is in such a good spot right now." Meanwhile, looking at a guy like Michael Hall, if you compare him like to like from Tershawn Wharton coming out 6'1", 280, 31.25-inch arms, not the longest, biggest player. Michael Hall's big knock right now is that he's quote unquote small. He towers over Turk Wharton and his arms are much longer. So yeah, he's still just on the small side for a 3 technique, but they've got a guy on their roster that they've kept on the roster for a long time in Turk Wharton. He is an insurance policy for Chris Jones in sub rush packages. Now all of a sudden something like that makes sense. A Christian Boyd, if you want to get a little more electric at a 1 technique, and you've got a whole bunch of guys in that room that you feel comfortable with. None of them should be progress stoppers. And so that's kind of where I look at it, Kent. Nobody on the interior defensive line outside of Chris Jones is going to get snaps over a 2nd-round pick that comes in and hits the ground running. Think of it that way. You're going to get value out of that pick. If a 2nd-round edge comes in and hits the ground running, he's competing with Felix, BJ, Malik Herring, guys that have been in the system a little bit more, that play the run the way that, Steve Spagnuolo and Joe Cullum want them to. Not to say that that's not a good pick, because guess what? You hit on an edge, you feel really great. It's a position of need, it's a position of value. But I think that there's just more to really consider there in the defensive end room and the snaps that they feel comfortable giving those guys. That being said, Kent, if they come out and they draft a Marshawn Nealand in round 2 or something like that, I think that should tell you a lot about how they view Felix and how they view BJ Thompson, because right now, the way that it looks, they're banking on growth from those two guys, and they feel comfortable with those two guys because they haven't added anybody outside of Dana. They add another guy in the draft. It should make you feel a little bit uncomfortable with where they stand.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
All right, you already know KCSN is going to be doing it big for the NFL draft. We are going to be live streaming all 3 days of the NFL draft, breaking down all of those picks. And on April 28th, the day after the NFL draft is concluded, we're going to be out at Holiday Distillery celebrating the draft, celebrating kind of the unofficial end of the season for us. And yeah, it's going to be a great time. If you came last year, I think you know how great it is. That time of year out at Holiday Distillery is gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Wonderful. We had an absolutely great time. There's going to be food and all kinds of other great stuff out there for you to enjoy. Bring your friends, but you need to RSVP. There are links on KCSN social media. You can go there. You can RSVP for this great event. It is going to be so much fun. We can't wait to see you all there, hang out, have some fun, enjoy yourself out at Holiday Distillery. So that is April 28th at 1 p.m.
I will say, if you've never been to Holiday Distillery before, this is the perfect time. At post-draft party, we're all going to be letting our proverbial hair down, some of us more than others. So, you know.
Craig, I have bad news.
What's the bad news? What do you need to tell me? No, it's nice because it's definitely, you know, a relaxed atmosphere and all of that. It always is out there, but we're not going to be working. There's not something else to do. There's not, you know, a watch party that we're doing a post-game show for and all of that stuff. We're going to be able to let loose and hang out. And that's what was so fun about getting to do that last year and getting to go hang out there last year, because we were, man, how long did we spend just trying to do like trick shot cornhole stuff for, like, it was hours out there drinking. I mean, it was.
I think we were really slap happy from doing 16 hours of live streaming too.
Definitely.
So you're just getting us at the, like our purest state where we're just
yes, absolutely the case. But if you have been out there before, you know how special it is. You know how fun it is. We're all going to be around. Come, please hang out. I will give you a hug, or not if you don't want that. But if you do, I will give you a hug. So please come out, but make sure you RSVP on socials so that we know how many people to expect.
Craig is giving you the option of a hug.
I am giving you a hug option. This is like a 5th-year option here, but it's yours to choose from. It's on the table for me.
Team option, player option.
Yes.
Okay. Well, please come hang out. It'll be a lot of fun. RSVP, KC Sports Network social medias do have all the information on where to sign up. So go check that out. It's going to be absolutely great. All right, let's talk about, one of the things that, we talked a little bit about it on the Mike Danna breaking news. Brett Veach loves to roll into 2020 or into the season with a ready roster before the draft. He likes to roll in before April is finished with a roster that can go out and play in week 1 of the season. And when you look at just kind of the moves that this team has made to this point, Craig, how do you feel about this team being able to roll out and play a team in week 1 of the 2024 season?
They could. How about that? They could. I don't feel like I'm not super comfortable with it, but they could. And primarily I'm looking at wide receiver and offensive tackle, which we have talked a lot about. As it stands right now, Wanya Morris doesn't have anybody that's really pushing him in a meaningful way for the left tackle position. That's rough. Not to say that Wanya Morris shouldn't be the left tackle this year, but somebody should be there pushing him to be the best version of himself in 2024. Currently, in the Chiefs' 11 personnel, Justin Watson is probably going to play the majority of the snaps, taking on, Marquez Valdez-Scantling's role from the past couple of years. You've got Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney behind them. I don't love the depth there, nor do I love the starters outside of Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice. So those are the two positions that I would be a little skeptical about going into the season with, because frankly, the wide receiver room needs help, like in a big, big way there. But I want to see a few more additions on offense now, either via the draft, after the draft, whatever it takes there. I'm less concerned about the defensive side of the ball based on what I've seen Spags do, and Dave Merritt and Joe Cullen and Brendan Daly to a lesser extent, than I am, kind of looking at the offense and saying, I don't like that there's some holes here or some guys that I'm not super comfortable gaining a snap. So yes, it's roster ready, with a caveat that I'm probably disgruntled the entire summer if this is the roster.
Sounds like the 2023 season.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so here's a experiment for this conversation. What's the record of this team if they rolled out today?
I guess I answer your question with a question. Do they still have Patrick LaVon Mahomes all year long?
Yes.
Cool. 10-6 floor. Like, I mean, that's what it is. And
10-7 or 11-6?
Oh, 10. Sorry. 10-7. How about 10-7? Yeah.
Okay.
That's the floor, because that's just what he can do, what Spags can do, what Andy can do. Like, it sucks to just kind of be that cavalier about it. It's, another double-digit win season, but that's kind of the way it is. Now, it's going to be a slugfest. We're going to hate all 10 of those wins. Maybe 2 of them are comfortable ones. The other 8 would be knockdown, drag-out wars against teams that they should be beating, or, teams that they shouldn't have in the same realm as them. I think it's a 10-7 roster right now under its current construction.
I think it's an 11-6, 12-5 type roster right now. And I know that sounds insane, but that 2 things. One, that's what I feel like the ceiling or the floor is for Patrick Mahomes. I think we hit the floor for Patrick Mahomes last year and they won the Super Bowl.
It's true.
I think the defense is in fantastic shape. The defense could roll out right now and go play.
It could deal with a corner addition, but that's it.
You could deal with the corner, but I think this team could roll out right now and go play really good football on the defensive side. This is year 3 of that phenomenal rookie class that this team put together that has some of those studs, the blue chip, Trent McDuffie, capable corners. I mean, you're looking at the roster right now on defense. I feel really good about where they're at offensively. I think, the caveat's probably Rashee Rice's situation. Like, I mean, honestly, for me, and like, here's the thing. The wide receiver room is better than it was last year. And I know it's not better by much right now, but year 2 of Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown is an upgrade over Rashee Rice and Marquez Valdez-Scantling as wide receivers 1 and 2 for this team. I just feel good about those 2 guys being on this roster. Justin Watson, hey, he's fine. One of Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney finding any level of whatever to contribute as a wide receiver 4. I don't know if that will happen. And frankly, I don't care. I still feel good about where this is at. I think this team figured out how to play with what they had last year. And this team figured out to put the guys on the field they trust and eliminate the bad football, as Romeo Crennel once famously said here in Kansas City.
Oof.
There's eliminate bad football. That was my Romeo impression.
Was that your Romeo?
Yeah. We used to rock around. It sounded like, what was that show on Comedy Central with like the hamburger ball and the French fries?
Yeah, you sound like Meatwad. That's what I was getting ready to say from
Yeah.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Yes.
Aqua Teen Hunger. There it is. I never really watched it. But back when the Romeo drops were a thing. When they used to, I think it's Danny and Carrington used to just like cut up all the Romeo Cornell quotes, and they were all timers. They were so good. One of my friends actually made a playlist and like integrated all of the Romeo drops into songs that made sense. Like Here Comes the Boom, because Romeo just would say brr. I mean brr. Yeah, I do kind of sound like Meatwad. Sorry for that random sidebar. But I mean, this team is very similar to last year's offense, the offense that removed mistakes and won a Super Bowl. And so I think this is a 11-6, 12-5 team. You're more nervous about the depth than you've ever been. But I think the receiver room has been upgraded, even though I want to get greedy here with a round one wide receiver that makes an impact in 2025. So yeah, I don't know.
No,
I like where
think
we're at.
They need it. I really do think that they need it. I know that we kind of looked at this, I get it. Like, again, it's Patrick Mahomes. We've seen what he's done recently. So who am I to say, oh, they can't have some success with this wide receiving core? And yes, I do agree. Hollywood plus Rasheed plus Travis Kelce, even taking another step back this year, is a better set of pass catchers than they had last year. I do. I totally agree with that. It is still not a good set of pass catchers. Like, they need that third guy that they can rely on a little bit, because
probably fourth.
Probably a fourth. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing 2 additions to this room. So that's where I look at this, and why I've always been fine with them, kind of leaping, moving up for a player, moving up for something and trying to rectify the situation once and for all. I know how this team feels about that. During the Tyreek Hill trade, they opted for more picks. Not a bad thing, because they ended up with some really good players that are now cornerstones of their team. But being offered pick 11, having Chris Olave in this offense would make some difference. Like, it would move the needle in a way that this would be a more offensively focused team. They would be much harder to stop. That's what I'm looking for here, because they built the foundation of the defense. They've got this set of players that they can lean on, that even if the defense takes a step back without L'Jarius Sneed this year, which, again, defense is volatile. They were probably going to do that anyway. It's just hard to consistently stay at the very top in all of these metrics that they were. So even a small step back, they need the offense to come up a little bit more. And so I look at this, that come up with Hollywood Brown's addition helps kind of stabilize and get that equilibrium. Tilt it in your favor. Make it a little bit easier. Add another pass catcher. Add another ability to put points on the board. Too often last year that we were just kicking and screaming and crying for literally any functional pass catcher. And, got to the playoffs. Obviously, it got better. Playoff MBS was a real thing and all of that. But it needs to be a lot more consistent throughout the season. They may have found a guy in consistency with Rashee Rice. We'll see what all happens with him shaking out this offseason, but they need another player that they can count on to force feed targets outside of Hollywood Brown and outside of a getting older Travis Kelce, in my opinion. Just give yourself that significantly higher floor on the off chance that another team takes a step forward, on the off chance that your defense takes a step back, whatever it is. Don't try and just stay the same and keep that equilibrium. Continue to grow, because if you're not growing, you're going to fall behind the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, if you're not growing, you're going 15-2 and only losing the Super Bowl because your entire offensive line.
I know. Yes.
No, I'm with you. No, the
whole honestly, run it back thing that everybody paints that in the negative light, and it's like, yeah, they were
pretty
really
good
football team. Yeah,
pretty good at that season. No, it's almost like, and I was gonna say, it's like, ask me the question if I think I feel good about them in a playoff game.
Yeah,
like,
that's really what it's about. Yeah.
And it's like, I could see them walking into week one pretty in good shape. It's just a matter of, a battle tested team. There's some depth here that I'd like to see them develop. There is some additional pass catchers I'd like to see this team acquire, be it 2 free agent or 2 rookies, a rookie and a free agent. Just continuing to insulate themselves at the pass catcher position, especially with the age of Travis Kelce, the situation of Rashi Rice. Like, they just need to continue to go there. And but I do feel like this team could walk into to the regular season and start winning football games. I feel pretty good about it. And I think we're probably 1 or 2 games apart, Craig. There's really not all that much. It's just,
I picked 10-7. You picked 12-5. Last year they went 11-6 with with largely the same roster. I mean, it's right there in the same realms of possibility.
Yeah. So I like where we see this roster. I think we know the pain points, though. There's really not too many major pain points. You'd like to have another corner. You'd like to have you need wide receiver. You need pass catchers. You need them. You probably need another tackle. You need another tackle. It's just a matter of how much of a tackle you need. Like, do you want another Donovan Smith? Do you want a first round pick? But they're not too far removed from they're not too far away from being a team that can win a lot of football games, if you ask me. If you look at the 2025 roster, though, I've said this a couple times in recent memory, and I want to keep talking about it. I think it's worth, if you want to be prepared a little bit for a curveball in the 2024 draft for the Chiefs, what you need to do is probably look at some of the needs of the 2025 roster, because this team has shown a willingness and ability, a willingness to go out and find players that they need not for the current year. And sometimes they do, but it's mostly anticipating needs in the future. This team is fine with red shirt type players. 2 of the Chiefs picks last year were essentially red shirt players. Felix Anudike-Uzomah and Wanye Morris. 2 of their 3 top 100 selections are red shirt players. BJ Thompson, red shirt player. This team's, like, we just got done talking about the relatively settled nature of the 2024 roster. You feel pretty good about where they're at. You could see a couple places where an impact early round player could make a difference, primarily on the offensive side of the ball. But any move that there's really not a ton of positions that are going to surprise me all too much in the top 100 picks, because you have to take into consideration some of the other positions that this team could need in the very near future. So if you told me that the Chiefs took an interior offensive lineman in the first 95 picks, I would not be stunned at all. In fact, part of me is kind of anticipating it for some reason.
I'm waiting for that one. Yes, definitely. I think that is not just within the realm of possibility. Like, pick 95, boy, that feels like a sweet spot, doesn't it?
It feels it feels very much like the Chiefs are drafting an interior offensive lineman at pick 95.
Yes, absolutely it does. The Chiefs have 24 total players on their 2025 roster right now. 25 with Mike Danna's addition. It was 24 earlier. It's in that mode right now. 25 players. Most of those players are players that the Chiefs want to keep. It's not like you're looking over this roster and going, yeah, I don't know about that guy, and I don't know about that guy. Maybe that guy's not a contributor, and that guy's probably a cap casualty. These are all players that you expect to contribute or are like current practice squad guys, guys that are going to be filling out the bottom of the roster. So you feel pretty comfortable about having 25 guys that you can rely on a little bit more in excess of some of these others. The Chiefs are going to add 4 or 5 players to this that now you feel good about rounding out the rest of the roster again. That's not enough. Like, you need to be thinking of the future. You need to be thinking about where some of those gaps, where some of those things are going to lie. Certainly, we think that guys like Nick Bolton are catching a contract extension. Creed Humphrey, I would expect, is going to catch a contract extension. Hell, Justin Reed might even catch a contract extension. But you need to be looking at those players as more, the exception and not the rule with what they have on the roster right now. Trey Smith, I think, is gone. Like, just the guard market is insane right now. I love Trey. Would love to have him here. Don't love with all the other contracts that this team has out there, paying Trey Smith a lot of money. So yes, an interior offensive lineman makes a ton of sense. Adding a corner to the equation should be, really something that we should be looking at here. Yeah, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Trent McDuffie are all under contract next year. Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams are done after next year. So in a great cornerback class like this one is, target a guy that you feel comfortable with in 2025, maybe trying to take that rollover from those guys. It's a better thing to have too many corners. Worst case, you trade one, you get some compensation for them or something like that. Again, interior defensive line, they got a bunch of guys on 1-year deals. You should probably be looking at that as well. Tight end, once again, we've talked about tight end relentlessly. Travis Kelce is under contract on this roster. There's not another tight end. So you should be looking at those positions that don't have that depth, that don't have those sorts of things. If you want some of those surprise picks, if you want some of those guys that you don't feel as comfortable with in 2025. That's why I look at the defensive end room and I say Karlaftis, Danna, Felix, BJ Thompson are all under contract in 2025. I'm okay if they skip out on defensive end to try and build some of this future-proofing stuff. So that's where I am with that, Kent. You feel the same way with some of these positions as well?
I think that's that's a really strong argument for edge, where it's maybe you're getting a little greedy to make that room better. Albeit such a premium position, you should always be trying to get better, and you can never have too many of those guys. But yeah, you can look at so many different reasons, and we can be sitting there on draft day watching. I don't think the Chiefs will take a safety in the top 100 picks. They've done it plenty. First off, they've used a couple second-round picks, but if you said that, it's like, hey, Justin Reed's on the way out next year. Value was really good at pick 64. One of the safeties that they really liked fell to pick 64, so they did it. So they pulled the trigger on it. Or, it's because they're losing Justin Reed in 2025. They're not going to be paying him. Or,
maybe a Dadron Taylor Dimerson happens to still be around at 95. He shouldn't, but maybe he's around at 95. You feel real comfortable making that pick because it's not now that you're making that forward. So you can move on from Reed, even though you've got Cook and Shamari Connor in the roster.
I mean, there's so many easy ways, and we spend too much time focusing just on 2024, which I get why. And when we're all having conversations and looking at players, most of the time when we are looking at our day 3 sleepers, what we're looking at is guys we think could step in and play year 1 and surprise some people and come be a major contributor in year 1. And granted, a lot of the day 3s, if they're going to hit, they're probably going to be contributing in day 1 too. But you gotta look at some of these. I think, but yeah, safety wouldn't surprise me. Wide receiver, if you look at 2025, makes even more sense.
Holy cow, man!
When you look at some of the Hollywood Brown, and I mean the only player that is on the roster for 2025 at receiver. Well, I guess you could Sky Moore technically.
Sky Moore is still there, yeah.
but who we'll see.
It's Sky and Rasheed. That's it. That's your entire receiver room in 2025 right now. Again, you need bodies. You gotta have bodies there. And so, while offensive tackle is a position that I really want them to improve on, it's why I keep going back to this. It's like, I get it. If they take one in round 1, I'll be ecstatic about it. But at the same time, if they believe in Wanye Morris, wait until after the draft, add a vet, try and push him to try and get him to take that role, because it frees you up to fill out 2025 and beyond.
And part of 2025's moves dictate, or like what they feel about 2025 can dictate the path they take. Not necessarily always the players that they take, but are they willing to punt on certain positions because of the health of certain spots on the roster so that they can be more well-rounded for 2025. Sometimes those kind of moves can help kind of guide your decision-making or break up clusters of players that you like, just to say, okay, look, we really like this guy. We really like Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota, but but maybe we want to, take a swing elsewhere because, or maybe, there's a lot of scenarios that you can create in your head. It's like 2025 will be in the back of their head as they are working to split players up, as they are working to decide the route they go. Are we going all in for a receiver? Are we going to sit and wait for a receiver and then try to fill our roster with players at positions that could be coming up both now and in 2025? There are a lot of scenarios that can play out. And watching them make those choices is always interesting to me. Seeing what they feel they need, seeing what, where they think the roster is. We felt like last year they made a lot of decisions for the future health of the roster. So it was like, hey, we're good. We don't need instant impact from this class. We need them to develop and get ready to roll. And if that's the case, then they're probably, maybe they're less apt to, get in the way of those guys developing, to your point. When we talked about edge, we talked about tackle. But yeah, safety, interior offensive lineman, wide receiver, interior defensive line, like we talked about, tight end, tackle. And it, like cornerback, even. Like the Chiefs are going to have 3 cornerbacks in contract years in 2025.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is definitely the case. One of those is Trent McDuffie.
Trent McDuffie's sticking around.
Yeah, he's sticking around. They're at the very least they're picking up that 5th-year option because they'd be silly not to. But yeah, there are so many future decisions that you need to make. Maybe you don't feel comfortable with Joe Thuney coming back from that pec injury. Now all of a sudden, interior offensive lineman, you're not just looking at 2025, we're going to need to replace a Trey Smith. You're looking at this and going, do we need a double dip in this class? Do we need to feel a little more comfortable about our depth? And then next year, after we've given them a year with Andy Heck, we feel good on either side of Creed Humphrey starting 2 guys in their second years, because with the guard market the way that it is, you don't want to be playing in that. It's too expensive. And if you're going to do that, you might as well pay Trey Smith anyway. So there's even guys, Joe Thuney's probably the only one, if we're being realistic here, the only one outside of Travis Kelce that you're looking at is maybe like, is the cliff coming? Is this something that we need to take advantage of and maybe be ready for the future on? Travis for a completely different reason than Thuney at this point. But, those are all considerations that need to be made. And because they have such a strong foundation, like Kent said, because they have the ability to look forward and, again, redshirt a first-round draft pick this year and still go win the Super Bowl, like they have the opportunity to do things like that. They have luxuries that other teams don't because they have Patrick Mahomes. That's plain and simple. You got the best player in the world. It gives you the ability to take swings that if they don't work out, if Felix doesn't play another snap, we're not going to look back at that and be like, oh, that's the one that cost them. Oh, wait, that's right. They won a Super Bowl this rookie year. Never mind. They have so much more headroom because of Mahomes that they can take chances on that and they can look to the future a lot more like we're talking about.
I think we get stuck in a rhythm from the outside looking in, just of the same players, same positions, and sometimes these teams are a step ahead of us. And just be prepared for these teams to be a step ahead of us. Sometimes I'm more curious in the why the team is picking a player than the player themselves. So I like finding out the theme of drafts as the drafts are unfolding for certain teams. It's going to be interesting to see what path this team is taking, what decisions they might have ready for post draft too. Sometimes we know, we don't know what a team is ready to pull the trigger on immediately after the draft. Donovan Smith.
We had no idea. Yeah, we had no idea about Donovan Smith. That just happened. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, not excited about that. I hope he doesn't start at left tackle. And then
I just find it interesting. There's still some players out there connected to the Chiefs that haven't signed yet. So Odell Beckham Jr., Donovan Smith, they feel comfortable about where they sit with those players and they're going to probably get something done with them after the draft. Hey, not showing your hand too early about what this team could potentially need. There's some gamesmanship potentially there a little bit with this too. So I don't know. It's worth paying attention to. I can't wait to see what the theme of this year's draft is for the 2024 Chiefs. You can find out all of the players that the Chiefs will ultimately select in the KCSN draft guide. So make sure you're checking that out. That's going to do it for this week's episode. We appreciate you. We love you. We'll catch you later.